I'm standing in the field. It's dead silent, right? They're laughing at me. They strip me down naked. They're beating on me. I thought, it's going to end soon. It's going to end soon. So then they start walking away, and I'm like, I'm laying there, and all of a sudden shots are popping off, right? And I'm like, oh, it's not over yet.
This is Hard Knocks Talks.
Lexi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So did you grow up in Saskatoon?
No, I actually kind of grew up in Pike Lake area, just outside of Saskatoon.
What was it like growing up in Pike Lake?
So I was in foster care at age 3, and then I got adopted, I think around age 6, but I was passed around quite a bit. Like I went from home to home, and I couldn't really understand like why I wasn't wanted, like what I did wrong or why I wasn't enough. And like my foster parents were always telling me different stories, so I wasn't quite sure what was going on. I was just trying to fit in, and obviously I had a lot of issues. Like I was angry, very angry ginger redhead kid. I think at age 5, I was first told about drugs and that my mother had been a serious drug addict. And I kind of understood how, like, the drug part of it all, I kind of understood it because my first memory was being in a closet, like, while my mom was getting high in another bedroom and, like, having, like, this wind-up radio and not being able to come out of the closet. And, like, I kind of understood when they told me, your mom's a drug addict and, like she can't come out of it. And, I kind of understood what they were talking about just because of the situations I was put in, cops always coming to the door. It was just.
So you remember that?
I do remember it. And I was like, maybe I made this.
You were 3 years old.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Your earliest memory, though, is at 3. My mom came back in the picture way later, but I asked her, did these certain things happen? Because I didn't believe what I was told growing up, I just thought like
That's too bad.
Yeah, I was just like, these social workers took me away from my family, I was angry at them, I just thought it was all lies. I was like, well, maybe that's what happens to Indigenous kids and stuff,
Yeah.
So I asked my mom, I said, did these certain things, like I named the color of the carpet or a certain smell or, even a name I'd remember. And she'd be like, yes, that did happen.
Now you're 6 or 7 and you're bouncing around different foster homes. Was this like a behavioral thing? Or like, were you lashing out? Were you angry? Like,
so the people would try to get me to call them mom. And that triggered me. That made me very angry because I knew I only had one mom. They tried to make me into this perfect little like curly haired like daughter and I was just like so upset about not having my real parents because I remember my mom, we used to do the visits at Sturdy Stone and I'd be banging on the window seeing her and we'd be told we weren't allowed to have certain visits certain days because she was too high and it was very difficult.
So when you went in, it sounds to me like you said, they tried to turn you into this curly-haired little perfect girl. Now, did they honor like any culture that you may have had?
No, so this is like, I don't know how deep to go with this, but I was adopted into a very Christian family, and they made me believe that Indigenous people were dirty. They made me believe that they were homeless and all drug addicts, every single one of them. So even if they took me to Walmart or something, I was scared. I didn't even know, they made me block out my mom's skin color. They made me block out my cookum. They made me block out everything. They totally changed. They tried to rewire my brain into thinking that.
So when did substances come into your life?
So I was diagnosed with ADHD, FASD, like a whole shitload of problems. And they started me on drugs when I was 6. So they started me on Adderall and stuff like that. And my body became very dependent on them. I was having night terrors and stuff. So they put me on sleeping pills. And I liked the high of that. At 6 years old, I loved that. Like I was like disassociating from everything. I was a complete zombie. I even told the doctors, like, I'm a complete zombie. Like, I feel like a zombie. Like, I feel like they're like, how do you feel? I said, I feel nothing. I love it, And they were like, oh, okay.
And they were just like, that's cool.
Yeah, like that's what
Wow.
we wanted because I was so angry, right? I couldn't like calm myself down. So like the fact that I had no emotions at all, that rather than feeling sad, depressed, angry, lonely, they totally shut everything off. And I feel like I was almost like a lab rat with how
Mm.
many drugs they tried to put me on
Mm-hmm.
because they were like, they're just like learning how to put kids on ADHD meds and, sleeping meds. And,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it could have been better managed. I don't think I needed the medication at the time. I think I needed some serious help. I'm going to say seriously when I was about 18 years old. Like I was raised super Christian. I was like I didn't even know anything outside. I wasn't allowed to watch TV. I wasn't allowed to listen to music. Like Eminem was like crazy to me. I was like I can't believe he's saying these things, Like I was shocked, So like at 18 like I moved into Saskatoon into a group home and all these other girls were using stuff, right? And I was like the only way to fit in is if I do these things, and I didn't want to feel things, I didn't want to think about things. So I started using and, it my life became very unmanageable. Like I was so scared of what these people, like the social services, everyone told me about my mother, right? I was so scared of turning into my mother and, like I knew all the tools that I had, I could use them. Um I I was just like super involved in school because I had dreams, I had goals. I didn't want to become what the people said I was going to become. They told me at a very young age, you're going to become homeless, be a drug addict, and I wanted to beat those odds so badly.
Mm-hmm.
So at 18, what it looked like was, like I had no friends. Like growing up, I wasn't allowed to leave the house. I wasn't allowed to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any social skills. I was homeschooled and was put into a high school at grade 9 and told to do well, right?
Mm.
So like I just didn't have any social skills. I tried to connect with girls there and the only way to connect with them was to get high or drunk with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody's like, "Oh my god, I love you," right? And that's how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it started, I would get overboard with it and then I'm not fully conscious, right? Like I don't know the decisions I'm making. So I started using drugs really hard and I started getting into gang stuff. I ended up getting kicked out of the group home because I was just too involved in my substances and I just stopped caring about school. I got caught my first charge,
What was it?
assault.
Assault?
Yes,
Okay.
assault. And that was because of the substance. I don't think that I would have done that if I hadn't been fully there. I was so, like I said, angry. Like I still, that started to come back up.
Mm-hmm.
And after I got that charge, I got kicked out of high school and I was just like, I just gave up. I was like, I'm never going to become anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be like my mother. Like everything that everyone ever told me is so true. Like, I'm not going to get through this. I might as well just go to the streets because that's something that's in my blood and that's what I'm going to be good at.
Yeah. I've heard someone once said to me, like, getting kicked out of school oftentimes is the last straw for people. That
Yeah.
is like the bit of structure that they have in their
Yeah,
life. Is that the case for you?
I was homeless and I still went to school and
Wow.
like
Yeah.
and then after that I had nothing and I didn't have anybody. I didn't see any of my friends. I didn't see like, I didn't have a counselor anymore. I didn't have a teacher asking me if I was
You
okay.
don't have a permanent address,
Yes,
bank
exactly.
account,
Exactly,
health
right.
card,
No, I didn't have
nothing.
anything.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And
No
no one tried to
ID.
help you with that.
No,
Yeah.
no, yeah, I was just, and somebody who struggles with FAS, like
Mm.
my frontal lobe's not all there, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it was just like things that I didn't understand, and I didn't know how to get the support for that. I didn't have anybody, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that was extremely hard, and I had this mind frame that like I couldn't do anything without help, right? Like I couldn't do it without them, like my abusers or whatever, right? So
Hang
like
on now. Abusers, what?
like my childhood, like
Oh, okay.
yeah, like
Yeah.
from foster care and all that, you know, like they just like made me feel like I couldn't do anything, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I just thought I had that mindset that I was incapable of anything because I had these disabilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
So tell me about what it was like. So now you're homeless, and now you're kicked out of school, and now you're on the street. What did getting gang involved look like? Like, how did that start?
so I needed money. Obviously, I really needed money.
Mm.
I got involved with some people. You know, I had nowhere to sleep. So I'd end up, you know, in AvK and
In where?
houses at AvK and houses like that.
Mm.
And you know, and then they told me if I wanted to stay there, then I had to do things, and so I did them. You know, I just wanted to be a part of something. It wasn't something I enjoyed, but it was almost like all this anger just completely took me over. So I was able to do it without feeling guilty. And when I did feel guilty, I'd use about it.
Mm.
And, you know, I wasn't into really hard drugs yet because for some reason people were like, if you give this chick drugs, she's gonna, you know, like, don't give that one
To
drugs.
the
Or,
moon.
yeah, like, you're
Yeah.
not gonna have any left if you give that one drugs.
Yeah.
So I wasn't quite into the drug life quite yet, but I was into, you know, like, it was just so bad. It's hurting people, like, you know, like,
Like violence.
yes, lots of
Were you
violence.
collecting, or like what were you doing?
So like basically like when people like the worst one was we had to remove somebody's finger because he touched some little kid, right? Those were things that I had to do.
You did that.
Yes, and if I didn't do that, I would be severely beat up. And I
Wow.
was like, I was actually, you know, somewhat scared of being, you know, beat up. Like I watched these people do things to other people, you know, like getting tied up in a basement. That's not something that I was interested in myself. I wanted to be on the other end of that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
In my heart, I was scared. I had to act solid, but I was terrified, you know.
So you were in a spot where it was either you do it to other people or other people will do it to you,
Exactly.
and you'd rather do
Exactly.
it to other people.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
survival.
Yeah.
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 So it sounds like at this point, I mean, you got in pretty deep, pretty fast. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
you don't come face to face with that kind of violence on your first day.
No, no, I don't know. I acted a certain way, you know, like I knew how to put a mask on and I knew how to talk and I knew how to do the language and, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
I knew how to say certain things, you know, I just did whatever it took.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's from a staunch Christian
Yeah.
upbringing, homeschooled and
Yeah.
like completely sheltered, to
Yeah.
now you're like,
Yeah, I just watched a certain person act a certain way and then I caught on and that's the way I acted, you know. You watch a couple criminal documentaries, you know. You watch
yeah,
some cases and then that's the way. When I jumped in, I fully intended on living that life forever. I
yeah,
had no hope of continuing school. I had no hope of having any sort of a functional life. I didn't think I was able to get a job. I just had no hope. There was no hope. I
mm-hmm.
was ready to do drugs. I was ready to push a shopping cart, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there any thoughts of like, maybe this life will take me out so I don't have to be here anymore?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I struggled with my mental health super bad. I've even tried to do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to take myself out a couple times and it, you know, it didn't work. And you know what? I was like I had the mind frame that I was like I was so angry. I was like I'm going to hurt people cuz I'm hurt, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Hurt people kind of thing
You
and
weren't
I
thinking in that frame at that time. It's just it for me, it's like it's easier to hate people,
yeah, exactly,
you know?
exactly. I was like if I'm going to stay alive, I'm going to do some damage to the world.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so what's the next thing then? Now you're deep in it. What did that life look like as it progressed? Like,
So honestly, I like cops are starting to come around, you know, like I was supposed to not have contact with certain people. Every time a cop came around, I lied my way out of it. So rank, I don't even know how I did it. I'm like, they're so stupid.
yeah, maybe you were just too much paperwork and they didn't want to
Yeah, maybe.
bother.
No, but like, you know, like they'd come and try to arrest me and I would say some kind of bullshit like you can't touch me because I'm a victim of so and so and so and so and you know and they were just like what and, you know I'd either run, like I was just like, I just thought slick.
Now you're fully entrenched, and the cops
Yeah.
know who you are. They
Oh,
know who
yeah.
you're
Oh,
associated with.
yeah.
They know all of the things. You're talking your way out of it.
Yeah.
What's the next thing?
So one time I came home covered in blood, head to toe. The people that took me in from the homeless shelter, they were supposed to be sleeping. They took one look at me because they thought that I was just this sweet innocent girl, right? Because I played that part too. And they took one look at me and they were like, "What?" Because I was on house arrest at the time. They're like, "What are you doing? Like, what?" And it kind of just clued into me. I was like, I'm covered in somebody else's blood right now. Like I was kind of in shock myself. I was like, I can't even believe I just did that. There was somebody that was centered that was able to bring me back a little bit because everybody else thinks that this stuff is normal. They think that this is everyday stuff,
Like
right?
the
This is
people that you were associating with.
yes,
Like that's just normal.
yeah, they're just like, okay, you tell them a traumatic thing, and they're like, oh yeah, that's cool, like
Yeah, that's a regular
yeah,
Tuesday.
like exactly, right? And then I go home and I tell these people, like they ask me what happened, and I was fully honest with them,
Well,
right?
what
I said,
happened?
so like I said, like we removed this guy's finger because he touched one of our friends, and I had to be there for that. I had to witness it. I had to get rid of the finger. Um, and at the time I thought he deserved it. I thought it was, I just believed whatever I was told. It could have been for something else. Who knows, right? But I
Mm-hmm.
was fully involved. Because of my past trauma and stuff, I believe that this person deserved it. Um, and there was children there. There was lots of children there. They were witnessing what was going on. They saw this stuff happen. Now that part, I was like, kids shouldn't deal with this, but they had already experienced a lot more than I have in a trap house, right? So, I that's when I went home and I was about to change my clothes, right? And they said like this is not who we thought you were. Like this is insanity. You need to get help. You need help right now. You need to go back to school. You need to they had all these plans for me, right? And I was like, "Okay. Okay." I kind of agreed with it cuz I was all honestly scared for my life. Like I put on this mask and I saw these things happen and I didn't want to be next. I saw what they did to women. They take women into a different room and do what they wanted to her, right? You hear her scream and it was awful. It was awful, and I got out of that too because, like I was somebody that was next and I played the part of being like the abuser, right? Like I didn't want to be the abused. I wanted to be the abuser. I actually ended up straightening out my life for a little bit there.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I was in so much shock from what the streets were doing. I knew way too much. It wasn't that I was scared to be on the streets. I was more scared of jail. Like I didn't want to go to jail because I feel like if I went to jail, I wouldn't be coming back.
Mm.
Like that's just something that like, it's the system, right? Like I didn't want to be in the system anymore. Um, so I kind of got my life together. I met the father of my son, and he took me in and he took me off the streets, right? And I really needed that and I really relied on him and I was dealing with so much trauma. He didn't know what he was in for. He did not know what he was in for.
Mm-hmm.
Again, he just thought I was just some sweet girl with a bad haircut, right? Turns out I was a lot more than that. I had a lot of trauma and I put a lot of trauma on him. He put a lot of trauma on me. And I thought that having a child would save my life. I thought it would give me purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that if I had a child, that child wouldn't be able to leave me like everybody else did.
Mm.
I was extremely young. I thought that because people in the street life have babies at like 15 and stuff, I thought that I could do it at 18.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
All of this happened. You were still 18.
I turned 19.
Okay.
I turned 19.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to have this baby. I was thinking, I went to all my stoner friends, I had some good friends at the time, and I said, I'm gonna have a baby, and they're like, no, you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Stop it right now. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, no, I'm having this baby. Um, So I ended up having my son. I ended up moving into my biological mother's house to help them pay with rent because like people were sleeping on floors and stuff, and that was really hard. So I hadn't been around the crack scene. I hadn't been around that too much, but my mom was extremely into it, like super bad. She turned the house into what we were living at into a trap house. And at the time, I was, doing my own thing. Stayed in the basement. I even like they were knocking at all hours. Do you have a smoke? Do you have this? And at the time, I was selling weed. So
Mm-hmm.
they're always knocking on my door. I eventually had to put a sign on my door, like, I don't have anything. Please
Mm-hmm.
leave me alone. And that's when I experienced the fiending, people fiending, people dope sick, like the addiction part of the violence was behind me. The addiction part really came out. Um, I experienced a lot of different people that was coming into that house. The hustle,
Mm-hmm.
people manipulating me. The checks. Let me tell you about the checks.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Check day.
people know. People would be like, "Hey, I just got this check for my reserve. Can you cash it in your account? Because I don't have a bank account." Oh, for sure. I just need $100 out of it. I'd say. And then all of a sudden, my account's bouncing $20,000, right?
Mm.
I was easily manipulated because I didn't have a job. I didn't have any financial support. I didn't have anything. So I was just trying to sell weed and I was trying to make money off of bad checks.
Mm-hmm.
Watching people. I ended up raising like kids on my own because like they're paying me to do it, and I was safe because I wasn't smoking dope. And, I eventually, like, I know that my mother's not going to hear this podcast, but, she she showed me a side of her that I wish I could just unsee. But like she had been hotboxing this baby in this room and I needed a break because I was pregnant. I needed a break, so I asked my mom, "Can you watch this baby for me?" So I walked into this room and she was hotboxing the room with crack. And I was so shocked. I was like, "What are you doing?" Like I was so protective against kids. And I was like, "What are you doing?" And she was so high and she no sleep, right? She picks up a fork. She tries to stab me in the stomach. Um, and I fought her as hard as I could, right? Knowing that she is out of her mind right now and I could die. And yeah, she got some pretty good shots in there and like I just had to walk away from it. I had to walk away and that was really hard. I was like, maybe all the stories are true. What happened to me as a child, maybe all the stories because I can't believe she's doing this right now. I believed that my mom was this totally different person, right? And I said, I'm going to do totally different. I'm not going to do what she did to me. I'm not going to do what she's doing to that child right now, I'm going to be different. And, I went back downstairs and I made a really hard decision. I called out to one of my friends. She was actually a social worker. She worked with me when I was younger and I trusted her so much. I loved her so much. I love her so much. I called her. I said, "Hey, I need to go out for coffee." I never reached out for help ever before, And we go out for coffee. I said, "There's a child in this house. I'm worried about this child." And in the streets, you don't call CPS, you don't call the cops, you don't, or your target, right? It's just considered wrong. So I said, "You need to call CPS. I'm scared for this baby." And I was, like people were nodding off and dropping the baby and stuff, like it was hard to watch. And so CPS was called. They came the next day. I blamed it on my mom's boyfriend. He had machetes and stuff. And like I took pictures of what was going on. And I realized that it was going to be unsafe. They told me that if I stayed there, they would have to take my son away too, as soon as he was born. And I was like, that's not going to happen. And I planned I went into labor a couple months later and I planned to get out of there. Even though I was homeless, I didn't want to do it anymore. I was scared for my life. Like, I've never seen people like out of control like that, just like fiending, right? Like it was so hard to watch. So I left, even though I knew I was going to become homeless. I was like, I want my son to, I was, it was too, like, I don't even know how to explain it. It was just, it was a close call. I was like, I'm either going to end up smoking crack with them, or, like, I knew that I was an addict. I knew that I was an addict because I couldn't stop doing certain other things, right? Like, I couldn't stop drinking and stuff. Like, I took that 9 months though. I'm proud of that.
Yeah,
Like
that's something to
that's,
be proud of. Yeah.
I and my friends, they were still young and still partying, right? So I kind of had to watch it and hold people's hairs back and,
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
um so I ended up having my son, and I had no help with that. I didn't know about postpartum. I didn't know anything, right? And I was dealing with the trauma of being at my mother's house. I was looking for a house. I eventually found an apartment a month after my son was born, but I started partying 3 days after my son was born. I didn't know how to handle the emotions. My partner and I, at the time, his dad, we were fighting constantly. We didn't know how to be parents. We were too young. And so I started drinking. I started going out and partying, and eventually, like, my friends who weren't, they're just partiers, right? They brought out, like Molly and stuff. And I just thought that was okay, because some of us were from the rave scene too. So I was like, okay. So we started doing small things like that. And then I wasn't sleeping for days on end, right? And then I lost total control of my mindset. And, I wouldn't come home, and I'd leave my baby at home with the dad. And then I started feeling guilty, and then cocaine started coming back into my life, and I started doing that heavily, not going home. And because of the way that the dad and I were fighting, I just didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to be around anymore. I didn't want to listen to my son scream, like it was so hard. And the postpartum, like, I can't even explain how awful that was at the time, just with all the circumstances going on. And then all of a sudden I realized, like I said, I wasn't going to be my mom. And this is what I'm doing. I'd eventually go visit my mom, and I'd see her smoking, right? Smoking the shit. And, she'd get me to help her smoke the stuff, like, because she was too high or whatever. And I thought that was okay. I thought, as long as I'm not doing it, and I just want my mother to love me. So this is what I'm going to do. And I'd help her, and then I started normalizing it, right? Me and the father split up, and I tried to do things on my own, right? I tried to raise my son. I got a house and I had roommates. I got them all to move in. We had house parties constantly. Constantly. I started selling drugs heavily just so that I could make ends meet, just so that I could feed my son, but not only feed my son, so that I could party and share my stuff with everyone, right? So I met my daughter's dad, and he was a drug dealer. And I needed help with things, and he started helping me with things. And I took advantage of that. And he was helping me with money too, and I needed that. I was in that survival mindset. This guy's helping me. I don't have any help. I'm going to take it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was also on a lot of drugs at the time too. So like I didn't have clear eyesight. I kind of disassociated from everything. Um, yeah, so we started selling drugs and doing drugs, and one day it wasn't enough. One day it wasn't enough. I started doing pills, and I'd go out for days. I wouldn't remember. People would be around me partying, and I'd look up and see them all looking at me, and then I'd pass right back out, and they're like, oh, she's fine, freaking Lexi. And my life flashed before my eyes. Everything just started happening, and I was just there. I was out of body. I was not fully, like. And then one day it wasn't enough, right? I decided to start doing heavy stuff because I was normalizing it in my brain. I saw my mother smoke crack. I was going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it was there in front of me and I did it. There was, at the time, I was blaming people. I was like, oh, you brought this around me, you know? But it was my choice ultimately to pick it up and do it. And, I tried to hide it from everyone. Some people caught me doing it. They were calling me names. They put me down, They said, you're dirty, you're gross, They said horrible things to me. And I felt like that way. The guilt, the shame started coming, right? I put everything before my son. I lost my house. We got raided. We were selling guns and stuff. Eventually, I got back into the lifestyle that I was running away from. And it was getting scary all over again, right? It wasn't just the fun of selling drugs and doing drugs. It was like the street life. Boom. I was back in it. And, I eventually moved to the west side, moved in with my daughter's dad. And he had more experience in that field. And I got involved. I wanted to be in charge. I wanted to run it all. I wanted to feel like Pablo, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the only control I had was just the selling drugs and getting high. That's all I had,
Mm-hmm.
And I started getting into meth because that's what was around, right? And that, I can't even describe the craziness inside my head after that. I can't even describe how nuts it got. I wanted to die so bad. I just didn't want to be there anymore. I just, and then I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. And I thought, again, this is going to save me. This one's going to save me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, I said, I'm gonna keep the baby, right? I didn't think, like, I was like 90 pounds soaking wet. I didn't think that I was gonna be able to even have the baby. Even though I was pregnant, I did not stop using. I was using just as hard. That was a guilty thing. I didn't tell people at all. There was only a couple people, and I'd go to a trap house, I'd sell drugs, I'd do the drugs with them, and I'd be like, aren't you pregnant? Like, just buy the drugs, shut up. I didn't care. And obviously I was hungry. I wouldn't eat for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I put myself in dangerous situations where, I'd get in somebody's van, I'd sell them drugs. Somebody's in the back seat, they got a knife to my neck. They're telling me to give up the stuff, right? I give it up, I walk out. I'm hungry again because I didn't get the money. My ex-partner and I are fighting, because he thinks I did it all, which sometimes I did,
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
the insanity of it all. I think about a month before I had my daughter, I decided to stop because I was scared that she wasn't going to make it or something, or, I was really scared for my life. I thought about how I had issues because of my mother's substance abuse when she was pregnant with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I hate my mom. I was thinking all these horrible things. I was like, I hate my mom. She's the worst person. She did this to me. Da, 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 da. And then I remembered all of a sudden, this is exactly what happened to her. I started feeling like, like I understood her. It wasn't her. It was the addiction. It was the past trauma. It was the, you know, it was from my cookum. Like it was just generational trauma that was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to kind of go back to my mother, and like we started using together. Right after I had baby, I brought people around. I needed to make money again. And I brought people around and I started using again. People were pumping me up, being like, boosting my ego, being like, oh, you're so good at this, like, I was like, yeah, this is the only thing I'm good at, you know. I'm never going to get out of this life. Again, I thought, you know, I have 2 kids now, you know. I just totally I just couldn't deal with it again. The postpartum, everything that I was dealing with, I couldn't deal with it again.
Mm-hmm.
And I just handed my daughter off. Like, she was nothing at the time, you know, and that broke me because her and I and my son, we all had this rank connection, you know, like I wanted to be a mom so bad. You know, I wanted, like, I can't even describe how much it hurt to
Mm-hmm.
not be there, you know. And of course, like, there was a lot of anger and hurt around the people that had to look after my kids, right? Um, it was, it was so hard. I was in the streets for a pretty long time, like a long time to me, what felt like forever. You know, I started doing fentanyl, and, you know, I liked that because I was completely shut down. I wasn't fiending. I was, you know, I just like completely had no emotion. All these things were happening around me, and I just watched. I didn't have to care. I didn't have to feel anything, you know. Um, I ended up in the hospital a couple times. You know, I'd break bones and I didn't even notice because I was too high, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'd end up in the back of police cars, and I'd try and kick out the back window like it was like a live episode of Cops or something. Like, it's so embarrassing. Like, I just kept trying and trying, you know. I didn't want to be in that life anymore. I didn't want to be lonely, starving, hurt, hungry. You know, I wanted a good life.
Mm-hmm.
And my father, you know, he's a recovering addict, right? He knew exactly what I was going through, you know. And he always told me, you know, if you just stop, if you just surrender, it's all here for you, you know. And I believed him. I trusted him, you know. I was like, if I just get better, he's going to do it for me. I thought my dad was just going to do it for me, you know. I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, and I had this mentality like, you left me during my childhood, you owe me. You know, I had this he calls it a false sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
So I ended up going to Regina. I ended up detoxing at his house. You know, he took me to Narcotics Anonymous meetings. And as soon as I walked in the door, I was judging everyone around here. I was like, you guys are all fucked. Like, essentially, I was just judgmental. I was like, you guys are all like,
Dr. Pepper drinking old timers.
yeah, really. I
Yeah.
was like, this is a cult. Why are you guys
Yeah.
holding
It,
hands?
it,
Like,
it kind of is a bit culty. So
yes.
I don't ever judge anyone for saying that it's a bit culty.
No, it totally is, but
Yeah.
I totally love that cult. So.
Yeah, no. There's an old meme that I made a long time ago, and it says, you know, like people say like NA and AA is brainwashing people, and I'm thinking like, thank
I
fuck.
like it.
Like,
Yeah.
good.
Thank you. My brain needs to be washed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was introduced to that. And, you know, I did hear about a few people having a really good life and going through exactly the same story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having a good life and making it out of there. So it started sticking in my brain. Finally, some sort of recovery that I could get out of this started coming into my brain.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't done yet. So every time I went to Regina, my kids would be in Saskatoon. I would call them, you know, and I didn't like going to Regina because I'm like, oh, I'm leaving my kids. At this point, I didn't even have them in my care, you know. They weren't even living with me. I was homeless,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'd be like, oh, I need to go back to Saskatoon because, you know, I left my kids. Like, bitch, you left your kids a long time ago. Like, so I'd go back to Saskatoon and I'd be okay for a couple days, and then my friends, you know, the kind of normies would be like, "Hey, you want to go for a drink?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, let's go for a drink," you know, and going from a drink to dancing on tables to sitting in a basement, I don't know where I am, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it went, and that's how many people's stories go. Um so sitting in that basement, I wouldn't answer my phone for days. People are putting missing reports on me, you know, like, you know, my people are wondering when I'm coming to pick up the kids, when I'm coming to see the kids. At this point, I'm not coming to get my kids. I'm not coming to see my kids. I'm not going to my appointments. I'm not going to treatment. I've given up again. You know, those basements, you know, like, people would be able to get up and go to the bathroom using and stuff. I couldn't even do that. I was stuck in one place. Like, people's jaws are going, mine is locked. Like, I can't move. I'm watching all these things happen around me. I'm becoming a target because people are noticing that I'm just listening. I'm not talking, I'm listening, right? They think that I'm suspicious. They think I'm a cop. They think, like, I started becoming a target. I knew way too much information yet again. So I eventually just decided to stay on the street. I decided to go back to my mother's and live in a two bedroom apartment with 7 people. I decided that that was going to become my life. I decided it wasn't too bad because we'd have money once a month and we'd get, $50 worth of groceries split between all of us. I thought, they handle it. How do they handle it? I'm going to do that. Once again, I just wanted to be loved. I just wanted to fit in. I tried my hardest. I tried too hard. It was really annoying. They thought I was annoying. I didn't care. So I started to become more violent again. I started doing stuff that I was doing when I was 18, we were taking people out of town, dropping them off, scaring people. I started collecting money for people, we were tying people up again. It just started all over again, except worse. It's like you pick up where you left off, it gets worse, right?
Yeah.
Obviously I was older and, law enforcement could have really caught me. I you know, I didn't have any support going through any of this stuff. I didn't have any family. I didn't, like my mom was just, I'd tell her things, I'd witness people die in front of me. I'd go and tell her things, I'd get assaulted, I'd get raped, whatever, right? I'd go tell my mom and she says, yeah, that's the price of the streets. She wasn't even fazed by it because it's all been done to her. It happens, like you said, on a regular Tuesday. That's the street life. You're choosing this, and
Doesn't feel like a choice.
it doesn't. No, I didn't think I had a choice. I was like, this is all I have. I didn't have anybody inspirational around me that made it through anything. I didn't even try to go back to Narcotics Anonymous. Sometimes I'd message my dad for my hundredth phone throughout the month, right? And I'd message my dad and say, hey, like, I'm scared I'm gonna die, and then I'd go offline forever, and that was me letting him know, like, I think I'm gonna die. Like, at the time, those were times where I thought I was gonna die. So I was supposed to sell a bag to these people, and I was at my mom's, and she was desperate for more stuff. I needed to re-up. I needed to, so these people were messaging me. This girl was kind of rude to me. I thought there was a little bit something off. So they pull up to my mom's, and I get in the back, and all of a sudden the doors are locked as soon as I get in, right? And they start driving extremely fast. And we're going out to the railroads in Corman Park there, by Greg's Grocery. And I keep telling them, you gotta let me out of here. And they're like, yeah, we're not letting you out. I don't know if you know what this is. And I was like, you know what? Like, I don't have anything. Like, I have the bag I was gonna sell you. I don't even have money. The phone I had was smashed up. It was like doing this LED flashing thing. They're like, give me that. And I was like, sure, take it. Like, I was trying to make like kind of like nervous jokes to them. They're like, you don't know what's gonna happen to you and you're gonna die and stuff. And I was like, please, like, I was making jokes, but at that time, like, thinking about it, I was like, they're gonna kill me and I hope it's fast. I just wanted to die. I didn't want to live anymore. And taking me out of town, we get to the field there. They take me out, they put me in the field, and they start walking away. I was like, okay, this is weird. In the car, they had a machete to my neck, right? I thought, this is not a Facebook video. They're not going to chop my head off in the car. And I was thinking, so when they put me in the field, I'm standing in the field, it's dead silent, right? They're laughing at me. They strip me down naked. They're beating on me. I thought, it's going to end soon. It's going to end soon. All of a sudden they start walking away, and I'm laying there. I'm thinking, okay, so I get back up, and all of a sudden shots are popping off, right? And I'm like, oh, it's not over yet, you know? So I started running. All of a sudden I just got this thought in my brain. The first thing that popped up was my daughter, right? You know, saying, where are you? Like, you know, all of a sudden I didn't want to die. And I was like, I've never felt like that before, you know? Like, I was like, you know, I don't want to die. I want to get out of this. I want to be a mom. I had this like hope for some reason. And you know how when you're in the back of a cop car or something and it's like, please God, get me out of this. It was like one of those prayers, but it was real. You know, it was sincere. I was like, you know, I'll get clean after this. I'll do whatever it takes. I promise. You know, and I don't even think I was realizing what I was saying at the time, you know. And the shots are popping off, and all of a sudden I heard sirens. And I was like, oh my God, you know, they took off. I started running because I didn't want to get caught by the cops, especially naked. um, they caught me. They put me in the back of the police car. I would not give them my name. I was just, you know, I was also mortified. I wasn't wearing clothes. I was bleeding. They wanted to take me to the hospital. You know what I did have though? I had my pipe in my shoe. I still had some use to do. You know, I asked them, I said they didn't get my name or anything. I said, can you drop me back off at my house? And you know what they did? They were like, yeah, for sure. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So they drove me down the street back to my house. I said, I need to get my clothes on. Like I told them that I was fine, right? And I told them that a marketplace deal had gone wrong. Like,
Whoa.
just Saskatoon things, hey?
Yeah.
So I went back to my mom's. I told her I was walking in bleeding. I was walking in just gross, right? And I said, like, Mom, this is what happened. You know, I was crying. And she said, you let the cat out when you left. And then I was like, what? I said, is that all you care about? She's like, well, you lost all your money, didn't you? I was like, this isn't going to end, you know? Like, this is, you know, this is what she's become. I was, like, worried, like, from the beginning, right? This is what I'm going to become. This is not what I wanted to become, right? I said, Mom, can I please borrow your phone? I need to call my dad. She says, yes. She's like, you know what the best idea for you right now is to get out of Saskatoon. You can't be here anymore. This life is not for you. You know, I didn't think she cared, you know, but she said, you're going to die. You are going to die. And so I called my dad and I said, you need to come get me now. I'm ready. You know, I was begging him, you know, and he said, you know, I can't just make it happen just like that. You know, it was a couple days before he was able to come get me. But, he said, are you done yet? And I said, you know, I had that feeling in my heart, like I was done. You know, I didn't stop using to that day, but I was done, you know. I was like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes, even if it meant going to treatment. I thought that if I went to treatment, that, like, I was going to be separated from my kids, like, forever, right? But in my mind, I had already been separated from my kids, right? What's treatment gonna do, you know? I was using it as an excuse. I was, you know, so I went and stayed at another house, and I used up until my dad showed up with the Pine Lodge director, actually. They walked into this trap house. They walked into this trap house, and the guy that was running the house just cleaned it spiffy. I told him, you know, my dad's coming and this treatment guy's coming. You need to, like, you
Andrew.
know. Yes, Andrew. Yes. And then, so I'm doing my stuff, and I tell my one friend, I say, I'm going to run. And before, my dad has come down to try and pick me up. And I stopped answering. He would drive 2 hours and 45 minutes, and then I'd disappear, you know. And this is my plan this time. He was an hour away. I was checking. And my friend says, if you get out, if you leave this house, I'm going to hit you with my truck. I believed him. I was
He
like,
was talking your language.
yeah. I was like, please, promise.
Yeah.
So I decided to stay there. And, I told my dad, I was like,
When he showed up.
before I warned him, like, he hadn't seen me in a year because I was hiding from everyone that I knew, right? Because I was 90 pounds soaking wet. I was awful looking, like, so scary. You lock the bathroom door and I will crawl under it. Like, that's how rough I was looking. He walked in. I told him, like, I am super freaking high right now, just so you know, like, I'm flailing. And he said, I don't care. I've seen it all, right? My dad walked in and I could see in his eyes how bad exactly it was, right? I wasn't expecting him to walk into the trap house like he owned it. I wasn't expecting Andrew to either. They were giving out cards saying, you need treatment. No, seriously. And everybody was actually in that trap house. People were interested in going to treatment. One of my friends ended up actually going to treatment right after I did. I was obviously pretty humiliated that Andrew was in the house.
Pine Lodge sponsored this episode.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Oh,
Andrew emailed me.
Oh my god.
He's like, I want to sponsor Lexi's episode.
Oh my gosh, I'm not gonna cry.
Pine Lodge Addiction Recovery believes that healing begins with compassion, respect, and community. Their accredited 42-day inpatient program in Regina, Saskatchewan offers trauma-informed, client-centered care for people ready to rebuild their lives. Every person deserves barrier-free access to quality treatment. That's why their counselors work alongside each client to create personalized case plans and relapse prevention strategies that connect them to supports in their own community. To learn more, find their link in the show notes. Since 2008, 1,500 workers have stood up for themselves and won their union with SEIU West. Workers came together and won better conditions for health and safety, better pay, respect on the job. It's your turn to win. Canada deserves better. Workers deserve better. You deserve better. Visit seiuwest.ca, link in the show notes, and click on contact so we can help you and your coworkers win your union. Warrior Mentality, empowering individuals to conquer their inner battles through resilience, self-discovery, and personal growth. Embrace your journey and transform struggles into strength with Warrior Mentality. To learn more, find their link in the show notes. If you want to support the channel, there are a few ways. By becoming a paid member right here on YouTube and get early access to new episodes, you can buy us a coffee or you can pick up some merch. Links to all that stuff is in the show notes below. And of course, always remember to give us a like, leave us a comment, and if you're new, a sub to the channel would mean the world to us because it all helps us keep getting louder.
No, honestly.
So, was that the date?
That was the day that I decided that I wanted to change my life.
What's the date?
That would have been July 6th. July 6th of 2023. Yeah, I decided that I had had enough and that I wasn't going to go back to that life. Yeah, I went to Pine Lodge. That was the greatest experience. I'm not trying to hype Andrew up at all. I wasn't Andrew.
I went to Pine Lodge too.
Yeah,
that was Susan Ulmer's days, but
yeah. Like, honestly, that was the first time I ever felt safe in my entire freaking life. Entire life, was that place, and the support that I had there. And I'd try and start drama and try and leave, and and I met the love of my life in Pine Lodge, and right, but obviously that didn't happen.
You're cute. I love you now.
Yes, exactly. But you know what that is? It's the
we'll sponsor each other.
Yes, it's the connection. I didn't have any actual connections, right? So as soon as I started forming friendships and all that in Pine Lodge, I had that connection.
Camaraderie.
Yeah, it's
fellowship.
You don't have to give somebody a bag for them to like you or pretend to like you, I actually met my best friend in Pine Lodge, and we're still best friends to this day, and it's
shout out.
Yeah, shout out to Keenan.
Right on.
Yeah, so that's wasn't perfect. I still am not perfect, but I am a whole lot better.
Yeah. So tell me about your first year.
So my first year, I was posting every time I had like
A
30
thought?
days. And
Yeah.
I thought,
Yeah.
like, using all the Narcotics Anonymous language, like keep coming back. And
Yeah. I'm the
yeah.
best at recovery
Yes,
now.
yes,
Yeah.
literally. I was just like, I was so positive and like crazy and like, but also at the same time, how I was talking about putting on masks?
Mm-hmm.
That was a mask. I saw everybody in Narcotics Anonymous using these slangs, these logos. I wanted to be them. I wanted to be each and every person there. I didn't know who I was.
You needed power.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And, that's where I fit in. I knew I fit in there. I loved it there.
Mm-hmm.
I still love it there, obviously. But, I just wanted to fit in. And so I used that and I posted about all these, oh, I have 10 days clean now. Oh, now I have 20. I was just counting down. And, I was really proud because I was like, how am I doing this right now? This is everything I was told that I wasn't going to have,
Mm-hmm.
everything that I was told I couldn't do. I'm literally doing it right now.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be an inspiration to people. I wanted to help everyone, and I'd become friends with newcomers and stuff as a newcomer, and I didn't realize that in order to be a winner, I needed to sit with them. I didn't realize that at the time. So it was drama. It was, it was just, it was so toxic my first year.
I think that's normal.
Yeah.
I don't
Is
think
it?
I don't think you're special here. The
Good.
first year is always chaos.
Good, because I was,
You don't know how to. I didn't know how to live. I went to 2 meetings every day, and I ended up running the meeting at the Friendship Center on
Yeah.
20th Street there.
Yeah.
Because people would show up and they'd run it and then they would disappear, right?
Yeah.
So I'm 6 months in and I got a bread bag with change in it. All I do is make sure the rent's paid and the coffee's paid, and
Exactly.
that's it. I didn't send no money to head office or nothing.
Yeah.
There wasn't any to send. I had a bread bag full of change.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
what I can say about the program is for me, it just gave me a community to live in that understood where I was coming from.
Yeah.
And as toxic as I was so full of resentment when I came into recovery. Donna left me and went to the street, and a bunch of awful stuff happened.
Yeah.
So everybody's heard my story, but
Yeah.
but when you say your first year was toxic, I'm like, I almost think it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I don't know how it couldn't be.
Yeah. No, and I don't know. I still had those outside people. I still, I still had the people, places, and things.
Hmm.
I wasn't ready to give that up yet. I still talk to the people.
Go show them how clean you are.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I did. Every time I came to Saskatoon, I made sure to visit the trap house to give out cigarettes because I had them. Ha.
Yeah, that's real.
But at the same time, my heart did really fucking hurt because I couldn't take the pain away from these people. Because you know what? Just, people think that addicts and stuff that are in active addiction are such awful people and how could they do that, and but everyone has a story, as everyone has a story. There's pain behind it. It's not, and as awful as some of my friends were out there, they kept me alive. So I felt like I owed them, and so I would go back and I would see them. And it was an excuse to use, I do believe. But by the grace of God, I made it out of those trap houses until I didn't, right? Until I didn't. But I carried around everybody else's shit, I just wanted them to see what it was like or have the life that I had now, I went into a sober living house after Pine Lodge, and I thought
Which
that
one?
What was it called? It's Pine Lodge Sober Living.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and I thought that having a bed on wheels was just the greatest thing in the entire world. Like having a bedroom that was the size of a closet. It was mine. Oh my God, it was mine. And there was nobody going inside there.
Gratitude.
Yeah. I was so filled with gratitude. The first day that I got out of Pine Lodge, I had a can of soup in the cupboard. And I was like, oh my God.
I have soup today.
This could last me a week,
I got a pot to warm my soup up.
Yes, exactly.
I got a can opener.
Yes. And my dreams started getting bigger, you know. I dreamed about getting an air fryer and, you know, like,
Whoa, calm down.
yes. You have no idea how excited I am about that in
You don't
life,
think
you
so?
know?
I stayed in Trache House. Okay, I was in the sober living too, you know?
Yeah.
Like my house went into foreclosure and it sold when I was in Pine Lodge. Like
Yeah.
I came out of Pine Lodge and nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And the gratitude for the simple things. And
Yeah.
today
Like, I'm not done yet.
yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Like when I was in Trache House, like I had pans and they were all wobbly and
Yeah.
warped and shit. And
Yeah.
like, I got pans.
Yeah.
Man. I didn't give a shit.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
exactly.
me and my son would make a pie in our cheap little, you know, like our all crooked utensils and stuff. But we were
Yeah.
making pie with my 3-year-old son. I got
Yeah.
pictures. He's just happy to be with dad. He didn't give
Yeah.
a shit about the pan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. I can't believe you knew how to make a pie.
Yeah. Well, I Googled it because I had a phone.
What?
I know.
A phone. That's another thing. Like, what the heck? A
Yeah.
phone.
Yeah. With minutes.
Yes. I didn't have that for a long time, but
Yeah. Yeah, come on. He's just over here laughing away.
yeah.
So your first year, you know, you admitted that it was toxic and you were doing all of these grandiose things for grandiose reasons. When did it start to make sense to you? Like, when did you start to find some humility in the gratitude? Like, when did that start to happen?
Like pretty much yesterday. Just kidding. Just kidding. No, it took me a couple times of, you know,
Sticking your foot in your mouth, making mistakes? Like,
Oh,
what,
yeah.
Like, what happened?
So my first year, I got to a year, just about a year. I went out to celebrate, as you know, some people do.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that 12 hours that I was back out, I was like, I wasn't like, I wouldn't say I was like, you know, I was just drinking, you know what drinking is using, whatever. I realized that, you know, all my friends had moved on and this isn't who I was and I didn't fit there anymore. You know, I had all this recovery language too. Like they were all like, ew, like, what do you mean nothing changes if nothing changes? Like, you know, I'd be sitting there drinking and reading the basic text, you know, like,
Wow.
yeah, thinking I was all that, right?
Mm-hmm. Step on your soapbox.
Yeah.
Drunk.
Yeah, exactly. You know, my friends were just like, what the hell? You don't belong here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I had fought to get my daughter back. I really fought, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That was, you know, when I was in treatment, that was the thing that I wanted the most. I was showing people, everyone, all these TikToks I had. I'd lost my phone, everything, every picture, everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like I'd be on the phone in treatment and I'd be in the court and hearing like, you know, about my daughter and how she was doing. And, you know, that's what really like snapped me back is my kids. Like I was like, you know, I can do this now. I can be a mom. I'm going to do this no matter what it takes, you know. I was looking in for a place for us, you know. I needed to have patience though. I started working and, you know, I was working with addicts. I was working with homeless people. It was very hard for me at the time being in my first year and watching people overdose and, you know, watching like...
Where were you?
I was working at the Circle Project in Regina there.
Mm-hmm.
And that I just, you know, it wasn't good for me in my first year to be back, you know, helping. I thought that I could save people, right? I thought that was God's plan, you know.
Who's to say?
Right? Who's to say? And I didn't realize that I didn't need to save people. Just because I'm an addict and I went through things doesn't mean I need to go and save people. I can do what I want, you know. I can have my own life, you know. I thought that's what I had to do. So I decided to leave that and, you know, I started working on myself. You know, I got pregnant with my daughter. I started building a family. I met my partner
in recovery.
In recovery.
So you got your kids back?
So my daughter didn't come back till about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
But
tell me about your a relationship in recovery. From the rooms?
From the rooms, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had 60 days. And,
He
you
did?
know,
Or
I
you
did.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, you're cured.
Yeah. Exactly.
60 days, best green in
60
town.
days. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I didn't even know, like I said, I didn't know who I was yet.
Yeah. I think I made it almost 90 days.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, I touched that stove once and I was done for a year and a half.
I had a relationship when I was in treatment.
Oh, same. Okay.
Yeah, and then left treatment with this relationship. And I realized I was so cooked still. I was so messed up in the brain. I was so toxic. All I wanted to do was fight. All I wanted to do was be abusive, narcissism, everything, like I was still so flawed. I met my partner right after that, and he had something that I wanted, and he had recovery, like a strong recovery, right? And I thought that he would save me.
So you had 60 days and he had more?
Yeah, he had 2 years. I think that's what they call 13 stepping, but
I think that's what they call that.
like he took care of me. We're still going strong to this day.
Really?
Like we have my daughter now. Like he's got recovery. He sets me straight, man, and he's a no bullshit type of person, no drama type of person, and that's what I like to do. I like the bullshit. I like the drama. I'm like, oh, so and so and so, and he's like, how is that your business, Lexi? And I'm like, life started changing just recently. Last year I decided to go back out again, just for like
research purposes.
Yes, like 6 hours or something.
Did it still suck?
Oh, it was so bad. Like I was supposed to just work a bar one night, and this person, I said, I'm in recovery. This person gave me $100 to take a shot. So that's what I did, because I needed money at the time. It's always about the freaking money, I swear. I took that shot. After that, it was a whole bottle. And then I was in some trap house in the basement. Everybody's searching the carpet. One of my friends in recovery, she walked down the stairs and we saw each other and we're like, oh, and I was like, what are you doing here? She's like, what are you doing here? And then all of a sudden we were sitting together. We're talking about recovery. We're talking about how we're going to get out of this. And I was like, you remember how many times we said we weren't going to make it? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, we're going to make it this time. We're going to get out of here. Once we leave this place, we're going to try. I don't like to say that I'm not going to do it again. I don't like to promise myself that, because I am an addict and addicts make mistakes. So I said, we're going to get out of here. We're going to do our best. We're not going to do this again. And she said, like we left there. We didn't do it again,
Interesting place to make a pact like that.
Yeah, right. And then later I'm at a PA convention there, and I thought we're both got the same amount of clean time, right? And we see each other and we just start crying, right? We didn't really have a connection before. We always saw each other out on the streets, and it's like that girl bonding. It's really hard out there, right? Because everybody's sleeping with a boyfriend, or somebody's trying to get dope, or like it's just not a friendly world for women out there in active addiction. And now we have a really strong bond, and that was a huge part of why I kind of wanted to just stay in recovery, is because she did it, I can do it. I watched all these people, he did it, I can do it. My dad's a huge person too. Like he knows everything I'm going through right now. He went through the same thing, right? Doesn't matter how much time it took away from us, like he came back and he's clean. And I want to be like that, but my own person. I still struggle with mental health. Me too. Yeah, exactly. We all do, right? I do love my life today. And no matter what, I do try to find gratitude in everything, like you said. Like, I can't even, the life I have today is so much more than I thought that and I was like, I'm going to become successful. Like I've actually become successful, and beyond that too, I'm a mom and I'm breaking that cycle, I'm doing things that is unheard of in my family, right? And I have my auntie, she's a huge supporter. She's the only one in the family really that's gotten out of it, We just recently lost my cookum, so it's been a huge strain, but I I've blocked everybody from my family. Like I've learned my lesson with the people, places, and things. I think I can have them in my heart, but I can't have them in my life. Just because, like when I hear people talk on your podcast and stuff, I'm like, I want to be just like them. They're perfect, I just need to add that I am so not perfect.
Yeah. I think my editing helps.
Yes, definitely. But like,
I say that with humility.
yes, exactly. But like, I still make mistakes. I still have really bad days. But the biggest thing is everything that I thought that I wasn't going to get through, I got through. And it's going to continue like that. Like, no matter what, I hope my worst days are behind me, but I know that I'll get through anything, right? I can't, like, I'm grateful to be alive today. Like,
what about coming back into your kid's life?
My son, like, I was still around when I was in active addiction. I still popped in to see him sometimes, and I'd be coming off of stuff. I'd try my hardest, right? With my daughter, it was a different situation. I wasn't allowed to have any sort of contact for good reason, right? I was, I would go to where I thought she was staying, and I'd sit outside and I'd be like, oh, I hope I see her running outside. I hope I see her face, No, when I first saw her, she was with my dad, and she didn't even know who I was. And it tore me to pieces. And I definitely thought about going back out. I was like, she doesn't even know who I am. What's the point? Like, I was so hurt by it. I was so, I was so angry. But I was willing to do whatever it took, And the second time I went to go pick her up, it was even harder because I was able to start taking her out. She was in the system, right? So I was able to start taking her out, and she would scream, she'd be staying with Connie, and I'd go to pick her up, put her in the car seat, and she would lose it. She wanted Connie, right? And I was angry at Connie for a long time because I was like, that was supposed to be my job. But you know what? She saved my daughter. She did, because my daughter would have been in the system, and who knows what would have happened to her, right? It would have been so much harder for her to come back to me. And, she was with family, and I'm so grateful for that. But I was almost angry at my daughter. Like, she was so young. She's like 2-3 years old. And I was just like, how could you forget me? Every time that I saw her, I wanted to give up and go use, and I wanted to be loved, and I thought that was my daughter's job, right? I thought that was her job to take away my pain, take away my trauma, take away my suffering. I put that all on her. And about, like, believe it or not, it's like, she's 2 or 3 years old, right? Like, how could I do that to her? It was selfish of me. I put myself in her shoes, and I remembered what it was like for me, right? But all I wanted was my mom, right? So I thought that's what it needed to happen with her. It took a lot of time, and I wanted her to move to Regina as soon as I got out of treatment, right? And it took about 9 months to a year to get her out of care, and I wasn't ready. And when the time came to it, I was supposed to have my own place. She was supposed to come back into my care, and I said, I'm not ready. I can't do it.
I said the same thing.
Yeah. Like, I felt guilty about it too. Like, I was like, no, if I take her back now, something bad's gonna happen. Like, I was so scared to be a mom. I was so scared to jump back into that role. I knew that I was not, like, even 0.5% of what I needed to be yet. So I had to wait it out, but I always went back to Saskatoon, visited. The day that she came back into my care, like, I was renting a room, right? We were sleeping in the same bed. It was the smallest thing, but I was so ahead in life, and that was just the greatest gift. That was one of the best days in my entire life, was my daughter getting out of the social worker's vehicle and coming into my arms. It was like, I did it. And it was that feeling of, I'm going to change. It was that feeling of, it was that switch that went off, like the day that I was in the field of being done, It was that switch of, I'm going to do whatever it takes, no matter what.
Where can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook
Mm-hmm.
at Lexi Gibson.
Do you have aspirations of telling your story on stage, speaking to communities?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I want people to, have that person that I didn't have. I want
Yeah.
them to feel like they are not alone.
I'll put your link in the comments.
Okay.
I look forward to watching your journey.
Yes.
My friend, you've had a very powerful journey, and I feel like it's just the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So take good care.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hold up. If this hit home or made you think, help us get these stories out there. Smash that like button, drop a comment, and before you go, check out another episode. The more you engage, the more the algorithm shares these voices with the people who need to hear them. Big shout out to SEIU West, our official equipment sponsor, improving the lives of working people and their families and leading the way to a more just and humane society. Find their link in the show notes.
Say, this is Hard Knocks Talks.